And fam, so just going back to the United States, which is, of course, all this money we're spending militarily, we have always endless, but we don't have money for better political candidates. We don't have money for fair and free elections. We don't have money for healthcare during a pandemic. We don't have money for rent cancellation or anything of that matter. So, of course, people are suffering, and there's this whole debate still. Right? Like, you have to vote for Biden or you can vote third party. Oh, you have to vote for Biden. And Brianna Joy Gray went and interviewed Noam Chomsky on her show, on her podcast. And she worked for the Bernie campaign. She's progressive for sure. She's definitely one of the good ones. But Noam Chomsky brought up this fallacy of an argument that voting third party is basically what he said is you're working to elect Trump if you're not voting for the nominee, which is Joe Biden, right? So let's watch a little bit of how this argument panned out, and we can talk about it in a minute.
Yeah,
what are the long-term consequences of everybody on the broad left, Democrats, liberals, everyone, saying that under any circumstances, we will vote for a Democratic candidate as long as they are incrementally better than the Republican candidate? Does that way of thinking contribute to the rightward shift of the Democratic Party over years? And what mechanism will ever stop that shift if we're not willing to ever, under any circumstances, leverage our votes?
What you're saying, if you think it through, is we should help Trump win because maybe in the long run, that'll affect the Democratic Party. That's a terrible choice. Helping Trump win, as you're proposing, would mean 4 more years of destruction of the environment, getting possibly to tipping points, which would be irreversible, certainly making any effort to deal with it very difficult. It would mean stacking the judiciary with young, ultra-right lawyers, top to bottom, so that nothing would be possibly done for a generation, and I can go on and on. I don't think that's a wise choice, just on the hope that maybe sometime in the long term, the Democratic Party will pay attention to the fact that you're part of the 50% of non-voters.
I take the multi-generational threat very seriously. As a Black American whose family members have been living as a third tier in American society. My mother was born into an America that didn't recognize her basic human rights. In 1960, she's a relatively young woman. And so what concerns me is the way in which the vote blue no matter who mindset basically privileges more recent concerns that are equally grave as more long-standing concerns that are built in the status quo, and says we have to vote for X candidate to prevent X ill from happening. At the same time, those who have suffered under the status quo never seem to get an opportunity to have their issues heard.
So, fam, what do you think of Noam Chomsky's assertion that she's working to elect Trump, even though she definitely said absolutely nothing related to that?
I don't know. I was waiting for it to get more heated. I wanted to see him come back.
Well, I guess we could watch the whole thing.
Well, the whole thing is that with this particular clip right now, I have to agree 1,000% with Brianna Joy Gray. I mean, she was the best, I thought, pundit to Bernie Sanders, working for that campaign by far. And she's 100% right to point out that, listen, what you're doing is you're kind of this blue no matter who mentality, and surrendering right away is not really going to help anything. I don't agree with Noam Chomsky whatsoever, because when he says, oh, you're talking about irreversible damage done to the planet. I mean, you got Joe Biden out there screaming, we're not going to ban fracking. We're not going to ban fracking. I mean,
right. Well,
what world do you live in where the Democrats haven't been equally as bad, if not worse than sometimes, because they act like you're your friends. They act like they're going to stop, fracking, but then they don't. I mean, isn't that worse, fam?
Yeah, he's out of touch. That's what it is. He's a very privileged intellectual who is out of touch with the working class and the small and ever shrinking middle class in America right now. I mean, he's completely out of touch because it is a privileged point of view, as I stated before, to continue saying, vote for the lesser of evils, vote for the lesser of evils, vote for the lesser of evils as a working class person when you actually do need health care because you can't afford it, when you actually have student debt, when you can't count on not getting evicted or you can't pay your rent. So you know that a half measure that is basically going to along the eventual downfall of you and the lives of everybody else isn't going to do it. So you don't have the privilege of advocating for incrementalism. You don't have that privilege. You need that healthcare. You need that that actual ability to make money and survive working 40 hours a week. So when somebody presents to you a half measure, you can't afford to vote for it. So the idea that voting for Joe Biden is the best thing you can do is wrong. It is privileged to vote for Joe Biden. Working class people who have nothing to lose and everything to lose at the same time, who have lost the vast majority of everything, think about it differently because they see the system over and over again going towards incrementalism. And yet they never, as she mentioned, get their issues heard. They never get to actually talk about, hey, I'm poor and I live in a Democratic supermajority, but it's okay as long as we beat Donald Trump. That's what keeps happening over and over again. And allowing that cycle to repeat over and over again is what allows the pushing of the party further to the right. And that is far worse in the long run than actually voting your conscience. And also, it's very arrogant to think that not voting for Joe Biden is a vote for Trump when that vote was never Biden's or the Democratic Party to begin with.
There's no such thing as a protest vote. Your vote is your vote. You vote for who you want to vote. That your
Yeah.
vote is your vote. There's no such thing as a protest vote. And what incrementalism have we really got? I mean, we're talking about going back to the status quo. You know, what was better under Obama? You know what I'm saying? And you know, I talk about maybe the EPA, but you know, he was the fracker in chief, Obama. You know, he let the Keystone Pipeline go ahead. Standing Rock, he let people get their heads bashed in and said, we'll see how it plays out. Biden didn't say anything. Biden opened up his campaign taking fracking money. You know, what? I mean, so where? Medicare for all? We don't. He said he would veto it. What do we get there? Back to Obamacare where millions of people are left out in the dust. I know it helps some people.
And it helped. But the Obama years helped foment support for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The failure of addressing those concerns when he had the popularity, he had both houses at one point. He had all this immense momentum and support, and he was able to achieve absolutely nothing for the working class except taking wealth away from them and putting it at the very top.
Yeah.
That's what he did. And nobody's going to forget about how he deregulated the banks and he bailed out Wall Street. Nobody's going to forget that because so many people lost their homes. So when you ignore that and just say that voting for Biden, who represents the system that helped create the conditions
right?
for Donald Trump, then yes, then what you're saying is basically a circular thing that doesn't make logical sense. It's just not logical to say what he is saying, and I think he's simply just out of touch. I respect a lot of the work he's done, but at the end of the day, what we're seeing right now is a divide in class. Domestically in the United States, we are a class division right now because the vast majority of people do not have that much wealth at all combined in the millions as the vast top 1%. I mean, this is it. Bernie Sanders' rant. I mean, these are facts that have gotten worse since that man ran for president. So
and we said what the top 50 billionaires have as much as the bottom 165 million people, as half the country. I mean, that's really crazy when you think about it. And I keep on saying, well, what area do we get better when we get Joe Biden over Donald Trump? Because it's definitely not foreign policy. If anything, Donald Trump's foreign policy, which isn't great foreign policy, has been better than Joe Biden's. You know, Joe Biden pushed regime change out in the blue with Ukraine and did his funny business in China and was all about the freaking what happened with Manuel Zelaya, you know, in Libya and all these situations. He pushed for the Iraq war. He sewed up the Democratic Senate for, you know, George Bush to be able to go into Iraq. You know, he was the main support for that. So, and then people say the judges, fam, right? Oh,
Yeah.
Noam Chomsky, the judges. Well, what about the judges the Democrats elect? Can you give a little insight on that? Because I don't think they're that liberal or progressive judges.
They're not.
anyways.
I mean, the courts in general have been conservative for a long time. I mean, none of these people, including Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who voted for more pipelines, for more oil, who has completely racial blind spots throughout her whole career, have been actually progressive. They've just been hailed by liberals as progressive
Yes.
because of symbolic gestures that they presented. And also, again, when they point out to the judiciary, as Chomsky does, he's completely ignoring the fact that we shouldn't have to be blackmailed like that over this. There should be complete legislation to say, you know what, we have to have term limits. We can't do this anymore. And the judges shouldn't be. They should be maybe voted on. Should the president be appointing all these people? I don't think that system is any longer serving its purpose. And there's nothing wrong with amending things when that happens.
And a lot of problems is too is our legislation keeps kicking stuff up to the courts because they don't want to deal with it themselves. If we have a good body, a good legislation, we can eliminate a lot of the court's decisions. It's just the fact that our Congress is too chicken shits to make moves, so they defer to the courts. They defer to the courts on anything. So if we replace the body, the Congress, the legislation, half the work from the courts will be taken away from them because we can enact good legislation that the people want. So don't be so scared when it comes to the courts, the courts, the courts, the courts, the courts. The courts are doing so much work because the Congress itself is lazy and wants to avoid any accountability, so they keep kicking things up to the court rather than making good legislation in the body that we vote them in for. So we change that. We don't even have to worry about so many of these judges, right? So we could just change the legislation, take a lot of power out of their hands. So don't give me this shit about the judges, the judges, the judges. The only area I really am concerned about was the whole appointee of Betsy DeVos, because once again, it was the EPA. It was, I thought maybe Biden could be more green than Donald Trump because he was so bad at it. I didn't expect any help from Donald Trump. When it comes to the pipeline, it's a beautiful, beautiful pipeline. It's a great pipeline. It's going to create jobs. You know, that's the whole thing when Donald Trump goes, there is a military-industrial complex. Yeah, well, stop feeding it, buddy. Stop going back to the jobs, the contracts. It provides so many jobs building weapons. You know what I'm saying? These are areas I had a lot of concern when it came for Donald Trump. And I thought when it came to the environment, Joe Biden would be a little bit better. But no. He's out there screaming. He's even given...
He knows science. He believes in science.
But I'm not going to ban fracking.
He's not going to ban fracking.
And he said he was going to ban fracking.
What's worse? I don't know.
Kamala Harris said she was going to ban fracking, and they're not banning fracking. So why are you going to even believe him? But the EPA is one of the only other... other than the EPA, the school choice situation, which we have a big effed up situation when it comes to education, with the Betsy DeVos kind of situation is one area of concern. But I don't know if Joe Biden would do any better and who he would appoint if he got in there. He'd probably go along the same ways, and it would be more sinister and more hidden in the shadows, his agenda. So I don't even know if we can get clarification on that. Sorry, Nom. Nom.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, Nom.
He's completely off on that, and I think she gave great arguments. Yeah, he's out of touch. The thing is, you're not going to win. You're not going to tell people. You're not going to make people vote for Joe Biden by telling them that they're helping Trump. That didn't work 4 years ago. It's not going to work now.
Yeah.